Thank you. Good morning, members, and welcome to this meeting of Tackling Poverty, Inequalities and Housing Subcommittee. This meeting is being live streamed and recorded and will be made available for viewing through our Council's website. Remote participants, please follow the good practice guidance. There are a number of rules to follow, which we've followed many times, so I won't read through every one of them today. Today we have several important reports to consider, and I anticipate we will deal with the business in our usual efficient manner. I intend to stop for a short comfort break midway through the agenda for members' convenience. Thank you. The first item on the agenda is the Sederant apologies and Chair's approval of members' remote participation. Claire, can you provide the Sederant and any apologies, please?
Thank you, Chair. I've not been advised of any apologies this morning. Since the papers were published, Councillor Scobie, who's listed on the front page, is no longer a councillor, having retired on the 29th of September. We've currently got 12 members present, 4 in the hall, 8 on Teams. 4 in the hall are yourself, Chair, the Vice Chair, Councillor Ferguson and Councillor Stevenson. 8 on Teams are Councillors Blake, Davis, Dempster, Jameson, McGregor, McFarlane, Marshall and Wilson. Thank you.
Thanks, Claire. Obviously, we hope that the replacement for Councillor Scobie will be equally searching and forthright in his opinions, so we hope it's a great replacement for William for the West. I approve of members' report remote participation. Item 2, declarations of interest. Do any members have a declaration of interest or a statement of connection which they wish to make? I'm not seeing MD in the room and I'm not seeing MD in line, so I'm taking it that nobody's got a declaration of interest or a statement of connection. Item 3 is a minute of previous meeting of the 1st of May 2025. Can we note the minutes of the meeting held on the 1st of May 2025? Okay. Thank you, members. Item 4 is a presentation by North West Community Development Network, report by Head of Thriving Communities. So I'd like to welcome our guests today who are going to give us a very interesting presentation. I will pass over to Darren Burns to introduce our guests today and take over the proceedings for this.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, members. Today we have North West Community Development Network with us and to deliver a short presentation and an opportunity for members to ask some questions. The presentation is going to be delivered by some of the members of that organisation. So to my right we have Denise Malone, who's the Chief Executive of YMCA Dumfries, and we have Anne-Marie Coulter, the Development Manager for Summerhill Community Centre. And we're also joined by some other members of the steering group and support organisations at the far end of Council Hall. So if members are content for the presentation, I would ask through you, Chair, for Anne-Marie and Denise to proceed with the presentation.
That's fine. Okay. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for this opportunity. We're here representing North West Dumfries Community Development Network. And over to Denise.
So our presentation today is about partnership, how local organisations and residents are coming together to make North West Dumfries stronger, fairer and healthier. We'll share who we are, what we've achieved together and what we're going to do next. So slide 2, the network. The North West Dumfries Community Development Network is a community-led initiative built on genuine collaboration. Our steering group is made up of 6 anchor organisations, and they are as follows: Apache Land, Lift D&G, Lincluden Community Centre, Lochside Community Association, Summerhill Community Centre and YMCA Dumfries.
These are very trusted, well-known and well-established groups that already deliver vital services in our communities. By coming together under this network, we're breaking down silos, we're sharing resources, we're aligning priorities so that community efforts have a greater combined impact in our communities.
And we're supported by key partners, Dumfries and Galloway Council, the Health and Social Care Partnership, the Third Sector Dumfries and Galloway, and a mix of the leadership and public sector support that make this network powerful.
So just looking at the community profile, North West Dumfries may be the smallest of the 12 council wards, but it's home to nearly 14,000 residents. Within this area are these vibrant communities of Lochside, including Sandside, Summerhill and Somerville.
However, we do recognise that 9 of the region's 18 most deprived data zones are right here. So while there's enormous community strength, there is also deep-rooted challenges, which we've all seen as organisations, in health, employment and opportunity. That's why partnerships matter, and no single group can tackle the issues alone. That's why we work so well together. So slide 4, purpose. The network's purpose is to create sustainability, community-driven solutions and improve health, well-being, wealth and opportunity.
I think we want to maximise the impact by coordinating our efforts, building that capacity amongst local organisations and exploring new models of service delivery, including community commissioned approaches. It's about making sure local people and organisations lead the change that actually affect them. Currently, right now, we are actually focusing, it's been a big focus on strengthening how 6 anchor organisations like ourselves can actually work together on a day-to-day basis for the benefit of our community.
So each of the anchor organisations brings something unique, whether it's community spaces, youth work, family support or creative projects. Through the network, we're now sharing staff, skills, coordinating events and supporting each other. Funding applications, rather than competing for the same small pots, we're collaborating to ensure that we have the best opportunities for all of the community.
So we've established regular cross-organisation meetings, we share communication channels, information flows easily between all of our groups. That's allowed us to respond much faster to local needs. An example of this is coordinating food and wellbeing support across the different communities rather than duplicating effort.
Yep. So the result is stronger relationships, less duplication and a greater sense of collective ownership. And we're starting to see a real culture change from individual organisations doing good work in isolation to United Network, acting strategically for the whole community. Okay, what next? Our next step is to build on the collaboration by extending it to a more community and partnership focused, including residents. We want to reduce barriers to engagement and participation, especially for those facing poverty, poor health and social isolation.
And that means deepening our partnerships with statutory agencies as well. So decisions about local priorities are made jointly and transparently, which is really important for us. We're exploring new models of shared service delivery that makes better use of community assets and local expertise.
So one of our upcoming actions is to host a network information event, a kind of community conference where local groups can connect, share ideas and join in the network formally. It will be open to invitation for collaborators as well.
So our ambition. This is for the network to become a cornerstone of collaborative working in North West Dumfries, a model that demonstrates how community and statutory partners can achieve much more together.
With continued support from our partners, we believe this approach can deliver lasting improvements in health, well-being and opportunity and create a legacy of strong, resilient community leadership.
Now, thank you for listening and for your ongoing support.
And we'd welcome any questions or thoughts you may have or you want to contribute and how we could strengthen the partnership approach.
Thanks very much, Anne-Marie and Denise, for your contribution there. I'm sure the members have got some good questions for you. It's good to learn about exciting projects that are going on across the region to tackle poverty and inequality and housing problems. Any members wish to come in? Councillor Lowe, Vice Chair.
Thank you, and thank you for that amazing presentation. I was just wondering how you came together in the first place, how long you've been working together, and did it take time to sort of work out how you were going to be partnerships with one another and externally? So a little bit of the history.
I think personally for myself, being very much involved in North West Dumfries for many, many years, you could see that there was a real need for a network to come together, and rather than organisations working independently, having that opportunity to bring everyone together. And I think working with the ward officer was really important, ensuring that third sector were very involved, and the NHS, public health improvement, having them involved as well, who were singly involved with the different organisations. So bringing everyone together and building up that trust has been a process that's been really powerful. And yeah, just being able to speak with people and organise it, and we've had that support to do so.
Sorry. Yeah, so I was new into post, well, not so new now, 12 months in post as the Chief Executive. I've come from Northern Ireland. And I have to say, when I came in, there was a real kind of welcome and collaborative approach. So with the ward officer coming in to support, to explain how the community operated and the needs. So for me, from the off, it was clear that there were a lot of great organisations working in the community, and that they coming together, we are more powerful, and there was opportunity there to build on each other's strengths, as well as if we have a weakness or a support need, you know, I could reach out and seek that support. So we do see the developmental opportunity, and we all have a heart for the community as well, and we all take seriously the assessment of need or the needs of the people. So yeah, it's definitely a fantastic foundation, and I'm excited to see where this goes as well. Thank you.
Want to come back, Councillor Lowe? Councillor Jimison's online.
Yeah, thanks very much for the presentation, but also thanks very much for all the work you're doing. It's excellent to see the active, proactive collaboration, which obviously enhances everybody's outcomes. Just touching on that, is there a place for schools, colleges, etc., to be part of this collaboration approach? You know, the schools are the heart of the community. Often it's the place where people can find a way out of poverty, etc. And also we've got an outstanding college as well that I know do an awful lot of good job with young folk from difficult backgrounds such as that. So I just wondered if there's a place for that in your collaboration, or maybe there already is.
Absolutely. I think because what you're seeing today is the anchor organisations, and we're very mindful that there's lots and lots of community groups out there, including the school community. We do have the benefit of having many youth groups as well through our different organisations. So young people are very much part of the process, and having them involved through the school process is just as important as the other community groups involved as well.
Yeah, we already have a lot of collaboration with the schools, as I said, as the Summerhill YMCA Dumfries and the local agencies, where we reach out and do bring in. And part of the assessment process is developing programmes to engage young people to have a say in their community. And it would have been about 6 months ago we completed an assessment of need about the emerging needs in the community that young people seen, and that's how we develop. But I do believe we could potentially look at youth engagement on the anchor group if that was something moving forward. But we already do, we do partner, and we do engage.
Yeah, thanks very much, and yeah, it would be good to see if we could explore if there's anything more that could be beneficial, but not necessarily if you feel it's not that, if it doesn't fit with your model, but I suspect that there could be another angle to it. You know, if we get schools need a lot of support and helping young folk from deprived areas, and it might just be another link in the chain that could help going forward. But thanks for your response.
Thanks, Councillor Jimson. We touched on young people there, but what about older people in the community, people with disabilities, access problems? How do you involve those sections of the community?
So each of the organisations, which are the anchor organisations, have a wealth of connection with different groups in their communities. I'll give you an example of Summerhill Community Centre. Every Monday we have a Young at Heart. We've no less than 60 senior citizens that attend every Monday to that group. On the Tuesday we have the walking group. There's no less than 15 members that will be part of that. So each day there's different activities. So whatever we're doing through the network is fed into these other organisational groups. So it's very, very easy to pull together as much information and involvement from these groups that we've got through our own networks, and opening up this to a community network where we've got the wider community being involved is going to create more opportunities for others in North West Dumfries to also be very much involved.
So ours is similar. As I said, we have a cohort of about 60 older ladies, 60 plus, predominantly from the Lochside community, that come every Thursday. So that was a piece of practice. We as soon as I was in role, found that there was a need for a space for older people, particularly with decline in health and increased loneliness. So again, these guys are pretty much part of our family, and they're always engaged in the process as well. So there's a lot of intergenerational work going on that supports the feedback and the development within the network.
Thank you very much for that reply. Any further questions? We've got Councillor Sean Marshall on Teams.
Yeah, thanks, Chair, and thanks for the excellent presentation. I'm just a little bit more interested in, recently established. So, with regards to overseeing the network, do you meet on a regular basis, all the partners? Is it like monthly, and do you have an agenda, etc.? And I think some people have mentioned about more involvement with young people, etc. But also importantly as well, obviously your local councillors, what's their role in that? Do they come along to the meetings as well?
So the network have regular meetings which are all minuted, and we've got agendas, but what's even more powerful than that is the fact that all of the anchor organisations are in touch with each other, sometimes on a daily basis. We all have that connection through our phones. If there's food that's to be shared out, or if there's someone that's in desperate need, say in Sandside, then Thomas will be the key person from that anchor organisation to reach out to the others, and that's very, very powerful. In regards to our local councillors, we do have that support as well. We've got 2 local councillors here just now that are very much involved in North West Dumfries, and they've got their finger on the button as to what's all going on. Yeah.
That's great, thank you.
Any further questions? Councillor Stevenson.
Thanks, Chair, and thank you all for coming along today. And there's some down that side as well. So, and I think what makes this able to work is the strong people that are actually spearheading each individual organisation. So, thank you very much for all the work that you do. And I do see that collaboration out there. I'm sure I've seen Lochside Community Centre in the local school recently. Was that right? Yeah. And I know there is that collaborative working in there. I suppose the one thing we could say is that maybe if the bridge was used in the right way, we would be able to deliver a bit more educational stuff within North West. But anyway, it is what it is with that. Just on the links to the council plan, how much of a say do you have in that? And I'm just looking at the affordable quality housing and housing strategy. Obviously, that's the big ticket item in our ward just now, with the regeneration in Lochside and Summerhill, and then I know there's new pockets within Sandside. So how much of an input do you get into that? Thank you.
So in regards to community regeneration, it's very important for us that we are in the loop completely. And that was, one of the reasons that we need to make sure that for our agenda, there is an update that comes through our anchor organisations to that meeting. So we've got LIFT who are not here today. They've given their apologies, but some of those members will be at different meetings with the housing associations and the whole regeneration process, and the same with Summerhill. So that way it can all be pulled together through our network and everyone is clear on what progress is being made. Yeah.
Thanks very much for that. Councillor Ferguson.
Thanks very much, Chair. How can I say? Everybody said thanks very much and well done. It's much appreciated. Nobody really knows the number of hours that go in on a weekly basis, daily basis for the volunteers, because in the main they're volunteers that are involved. But their modesty lets them down, because what they've described today is, trust me, is just the tip of the iceberg of the work they do. And I think that's the bit we need to recognise, is without anchor groups like this, and without organisations like this, our fight to reduce poverty, at least to manageable levels, would just be hopelessly blown out the water. So we really need to embrace these groups, take this forward, and be aware of that when we plan for the future, Chair.
I think that's a comment, isn't it, Councillor Ferguson, rather than a question. So I think we all echo that we certainly... Would you like to come in and comment on that?
Oh, just a massive thank you. Really appreciate that.
So I don't have any further questions for you. You'll be relieved to know. But it's really good, as Councillor Ferguson, to see the work that's going on at the ground level, and you don't only see some of it because it's a lot of people involved in it, a lot of staff and volunteers involved in it. And it's good to see that all these organisations in the local community are working together to tackle the challenges which face the community. So more power to your elbow, and I hope you continue to thrive. So thank you very much for your attendance today. Thank you very, very, very much. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Sorry, Chair, I was just rearranging my surgery there. I'm just rearranging my surgeries there.
Okay. We're on to item 5 rather, Deficient Galway Local Child Poverty Action Plan 2024 to 26, and report for 24 to 25, and report by Executive Director Education and Skills and Community Wellbeing. There's some good news in the report where there's reported reduction in child poverty across the region and an improving position compared with the rest of Scotland. But before we celebrate, I think you've got to recognise that child poverty levels are still over 20%, and there's a lot more work to do. But it does give us encouragement to continue our work, to see what else we can do to tackle poverty in our region. Lynn Burgess is here to answer you and assist with your questions. So I'll open up the debate to members.
Oh, yeah, thank you, Chair. This is a disaster. Yeah, I mean, to be fair, I could have my own committee on this. I've got loads of stuff to ask. On page 37, we go on about the housing. Sorry. Put this down, might be easier. Yeah, on page 37, it actually goes on about the housing, but there's only two parts of housing in there, but the whole reason for this committee including poverty and inequalities was because that was so closely linked to housing. So I'm surprised there's only 2 items there. And also we delivered 166 affordable homes as part of 24-25. Was there a particular target for that? I think that would be quite helpful to know. And then also on page 35, it lists the NHS, and the funding has been secured for the NHS anchor role for the local employability and skills partnership. Does the council do anything similar to this to help people get back into work? And then, sorry, the last one on we've got our priority groups that we list, but are these the overall priority groups? I'm looking at page 33 and I've tried to pull it out the report. It might be in there somewhere and I've lost it. But it lists all these priority groups and those registered, but is this the totality of the groups and the increases, or is this just the ones that are part of the streaming fund? Thank you.
Question there. Who wants to come in first? Jamie, you got mentioned housing on there, as mentioned.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Councillor Stevenson, for the query. In terms of the target for the delivery of affordable homes, we're now in a position where the Council set out a very clear target within its local housing strategy to aim to achieve 210 affordable homes per annum as part of the housing supply target 2025 to 2035. This predates that housing supply target, so we're now looking at increasing over and above this 166 figure. But we very much set out this new target, and happy to pick up any discussions around strengthening the role of housing within the action plan as well. I'll pass over to Lynn for the other queries though.
Thanks, Jamie.
Happy with that
I'm
one.
glad you were there to do the housing one for me.
Yeah, that's a good, Lynn. Yeah, you want to come in?
Yep, on the other 2 points, so the NHS employability anchor role has been funded by the local employability and skills partnership, which is hosted by the council. So, and we have the employability team is hosted also by the council. In specific terms of the anchor work, though, we don't have a similar post. So the anchor role is about creating that link with the opportunities within the NHS as an employer. And in actual fact, we do have some work going on because we host the employability team, but we don't have one dedicated role for that. So there is the possibility that that's something that we could go back to the employability and skills partnership to look at if members felt that that was a good suggestion. There is some work going on, but there is not a dedicated post. The third question around the priority groups. The priority groups are the Scottish Government priority groups. So that's what the child poverty funding focuses predominantly on, those priority groups. So the overall child poverty figures show that nearly 1 in 4 children are in poverty still. If you look at the priority groups, those groups, it's 9 out of 10 in those groups. So that's the reason for that focus. Thanks.
Councillor Stevenson, want to come back?
Yeah, sorry, just for clarity, Lynn, so sorry, I maybe wasn't clear enough. The figures within there, I'm not disputing the priority groups, but the figures within there, is that the total amount of people that we know, say for example, lone parents, that we know are lone parents but might not actually be part of the DG Works pipeline?
No, that's the specific DG Works pipeline. Sorry, I misunderstood that. Yeah, that's the actual numbers that are registered with the DG Works pipeline.
So just for clarity, do we have another table that lists the amount of these priority groups that maybe aren't actually part of the pipeline? Thank you.
We don't have that. We probably could get that information, but we don't have it.
Thanks, Chair. Can I just come back in at the end? I've just got some suggestions. I'll send them across to Claire just now. Just amendments for the recommendations. Thank you.
Come back. Do you want an action point to be made that Lynn suggested?
Yeah, it would be good if those figures could come back to committee and make an action, really disaggregate them. Thank you.
Okay, we'll take that as the figures come back. First is Councillor McFarlane.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thanks for letting me in. I'm looking at page 29, where we've got an improvement in the child poverty rate from 27% almost down to just under 23%, and I think that's to be commended. However, our performance is very middle of the table. We're 15th of the 32 local authorities, although we're one of 10 who have seen improvement in relation to the reduction of child poverty. It's disappointing to note that the two-child limit is having an impact in government policies, having a detrimental impact on the poverty of our youngest and most vulnerable is really reprehensible. But we're clearly doing work in spite of that. Is there any more that we can be doing? What lessons can we learn from other local authorities who are obviously performing better than us in relation to this measure? And do we have an indication of what difference the Scottish Child Cap is making and how much that contributes to the reduction that we've had? Thank you.
I think we touched on that, we discussed at our seminar on how we could learn from other authorities, and that's a future action, I think, to look at. But
yeah, thank you, Chair.
Lynn?
But obviously, seminar's not available to the public, so if we could have the answer in public, that'd be great. Thanks.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Lynn, if you would come back on that.
Yep, happy to come back on that. We are already engaging with other local authorities in terms of employability. We meet regularly with other local authorities for that type of work, and we have recently, as members will be aware, been awarded money through the Scottish Government's Fairer Futures Partnership, and part of that is a collaborative programme where we are working with the Pathfinders, the other local authorities that have already had Fairer Futures for a number of years. So we're doing a lot of work benchmarking and picking up good practice from other areas. In terms of the Scottish Child Payment as well, there's been some recent work from Fraser of Allender Institute which shows that the Scottish Child Payment is beginning to have a positive impact, and I'm happy to share that information as well if that would be helpful.
Councillor McFarlane, you want to come back?
Yeah, thank you for that, Chair. Yes, Lynn, if you could share that, that'd be excellent. Thank you.
Councillor Jimison next online.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Referencing page 27, part of the executive summary, bullet point, I think it's 6 or 7, it mentions enhanced cross-sector collaboration to address the root causes of poverty. I've already had a good example of collaboration in the earlier item, but this has been something I've promoted for quite a while now, when this committee, this subcommittee is actually addressing the need for more collaboration to address, and I stress, the roots of poverty. I'm really pleased to see Harry here and also Lynn, because I think they're pretty crucial to the area of the addressing the roots of poverty. The question that I would like to ask, and I know it's a bit of a leading question because I know a lot of the work that you're doing, but how effective do you think we are in the education, skills, community well-being, addressing some of the issues that are prompted by poverty, including housing, solutions of which could be better employment through better outcomes from school and finding positive destinations? Could you just give us a brief précis of the work that you do, for example, in the local employability partnership and all the other things that they do in the community to try and lift people out, lift families out of poverty by lifting the children out of poverty into better opportunities in terms of outcomes at school and employability? So it's just how well are we working together to take the lower SIMD children from poorer families to find them better outcomes from school and better outcomes in employability to lift them out of poverty in the longer term? Thank you.
Is that a question for you, Harry?
It's really to Harry and Lynn.
I'll bring in Lynn first.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Jamieson. So the Employability and Skills Partnership is entirely focused on those areas with multiple deprivation. We annually do an investment plan where we look at the data and make sure that we're targeting our interventions on those areas that need it the most and on those priority groups which need it the most. So we have employability and child poverty employability interventions. There's a great deal of intersectional issues here as well. We have a very significant disability employment gap, and we know that families that are disabled or have a member who are disabled are more likely to be in poverty. So we're trying to make our work as cross-sector and cross-functional as possible. We also, what I will do is share our provision. I've got a slide pack that I can share. I'll include that in the information that I'm sharing to all members, because there's a huge range of provision to go into, probably too much to go into here, but I guess the thing that is most fundamentally useful is the key worker service, which we have right across the region. It's delivered in partnership with, it's commissioned, so it's delivered in partnership with triage services and the council employability team. And we also have a dedicated key worker service that support families. We have a dedicated key worker service who support young people on that transition point, young people with disabilities and additional support needs when they're leaving school and moving into the world of work. And the fundamental success of those measures are down to the relationship between the key worker and the individual that they're supporting. And there's a whole range of support which is layered around that. So there's access to a small barrier removal fund, there's access for some people in some circumstances to driving lessons, access to other funds that remove barriers to work. And we have the private sector representation in the LEP, the Employability Partnership. We have the college, both colleges. We have Skills Development Scotland. We have good support from DWP. So it's a real multi-agency effort. But if members are happy to receive that pack, I'll send it round. You can see the full range of the support work that we do. Thanks.
I'll go on to Harry Hay first.
Thanks very much, Chair. And I think the question that was asked is pretty critical in terms of how, as a council and directorate, we translate our strategic ambitions into impact on the ground. And certainly from my perspective, I think the synergies across the various services, many of which have already been touched on this morning, and the fact that we sit within the wider directorate are really now starting to develop. As Lynn said, it's all about developing really good, effective working relationships and partners, and being able to share information so you're able to gauge the impact that service direction takes. You know, members will be well aware that within Thriving Communities, my element of the directorate, you know, we've clearly got Lynn Employability Services, we've got Youth Services, we've got Adult Learning, we've got Community Planning Engagement, to name some. And as part of our overall planning, the issues that we're talking about today, including child poverty, is very much part of how we plan and collaborate and ensure that when we report back to either service committee or to full council, in terms of the impact that resources that are allocated to us are making, that it's very clear. And I think the example that we saw this morning from that one particular group, that's what we're trying to foster, that regardless of what we're trying to achieve, it's clearly always beneficial if it's done in partnership and collaboration, and that's what we really try and foster and develop throughout the directorate. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Harry. Councillor Jimison.
Yeah, just one follow-up. Yeah, I appreciate all the work. I appreciate more than ever all the work that the youth work does now that now this has been added to the Education Committee, and it is incredible. It's massive. On page 28, we talk about the alignment of the national strategy, which is Best Start, Bright Futures. Where I think there possibly be a gap, and you may or may not agree with this, is in the lower SIMD, children tend to have poorer outcomes from school. There is an increase in literacy and numeracy achievements at school, which is really good to see. That's, we can see, a direct effect of the closing the poverty-related attainment gap. But do we work on the possibility and the potential of young children with difficulties early enough? The local employability partnership and communities tend to work, I believe, with the children that are leaving school. But while they're in school, is there more that we can do within the wider social services, education, skills, community wellbeing? Is there something more we can do at school? We're lifting the standards of literacy and numeracy for young people, but beyond that, through other qualifications, there isn't the same rise in outcomes for children from poorer backgrounds? Should we be acting earlier to look ahead? What are the positive destinations for children that have struggled through no fault of their own at schools?
Come in that one. Lynn?
Yeah, I'm happy to come in on that one. So I think earlier intervention is one of the things that we're always looking at, and the new funding that we have just received and is looking at, it's a Fairer Futures partnership approach. It's a much wider approach, and it's an earlier approach. It is not a school-based approach, it's a community-based approach, but because it's a family approach, I think that will have a significant impact in that earlier stages. It's a new way of working, and it's a completely new project, so I guess we're at the best part of it just now, to be looking at the earlier intervention if we can.
That's great, thank you very much. Thanks, Lynn.
And we'll look forward to seeing in the park been distributed. That's very good. I've got Councillor Dempster, then Councillor Ferguson, then Councillor Marshall.
Thanks, Chair. Good morning, members. A couple of observations and a couple of questions. Councillor Stevenson talked about the need for additional housing. I absolutely agree with that, and hopefully that'll be maybe teased out a bit more in agenda item 8. On page 23 of the report on the education and learning element of it, the first bullet point is places of learning that are inclusive, sustainable, and meet the needs of local communities. How does that fit with the Education Department accelerating a plan for fewer and better schools and a school closure programme which is just about bound to proceed unless something is done to control that? And what I'm saying is this report doesn't seem to gel with what the Education Department are striving to do. This refers quite clearly to local outcomes, and you don't get that with closed schools. But on a question for you, in page 38, the Poverty Action Plan, when I can find page 38, the first point is access to transport. Develop and implement new and specific actions with transport providers which reflect the needs of families living in poverty. There are no buses running for Killahome any night or on a Sunday, so that access to employment is severely restricted, and this report doesn't reflect the needs of the biggest area ASIMD in Scotland, which is Killahome. And the last question in page 49, the case study where the outcomes, co-design and community-led solution, page 48, a centralised location for childcare and support services. Action for Children have a project in Killahome. It doesn't seem to be featured there. And I just hope that Action for Children have been included in the discussions. So the outcome of the whole project and the work conducted is very satisfying. Thanks for that, Chairman.
Thank you. Lynn?
Thank you, Councillor Dempster. Yeah, transport is a well-known issue for us, and we haven't had an update in this Child Poverty Action Plan report from transport as of yet. So it's something that we can tackle through employability, and we do. And the work that you're talking about on page 48 in Kirkconnell and Killahome, transport is one of the key features there. So that's something we do. We provide bus tickets. Admittedly, we don't always have buses, so we also provide driving lessons for people, but it is work related rather than community related. So the work that we did in Kirkconnell and Killahome was an early pilot for the work that we're now going to build with the Fairer Futures partnership funding. So this is a short-term project though, so it's not going to have a long-term impact. I have to be straight about that from the outset, but that work will now build on the work that was done in Kirkconnell and Killahome. And Action for Children were one of the groups that were involved in that. So that work is going to be continued and built upon, and transport is at the forefront of it.
Councillor Dempster, do you want to come back?
Just to thank Lynn for a response, and definitely the transport issue have to be raised elsewhere because we can't give kids bus tickets if they're not buses to take them anywhere. And that's for employment as well as the socialising aspect. It's absolutely vital for young people that are in the deprived area. And the only thing is an observation, but I would ask Harry Hay to look into it. I understand that the Fries and Galloway Citizens Vice Service do not come to kill a home unless it's externally funded. And I think that's absolutely wrong, given the amount of money we as a council provide DAGCAS. And I wouldn't mind that being explored. My information may be out of date or wrong, but I'd certainly want to understand what role DAGCAS play in supporting one of the poorest or worst deprived areas in Scotland. Thank you.
You want to come back, Lynn, or you have it?
Yeah, I've taken a note to follow that up. My understanding is that DAGCAS do attend, but I'm not 100%, so I'll follow up and find out.
Yeah, I know they intend it. It's who pays it, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, Councillor Ferguson.
Thanks very much, Chair. Just a couple of things. First off, for housekeeping, page 30, on the very top, it's got trend over time and it goes up year on year, and it comes, the last one is 2014-15 again, but it's down to 22.7, so I'm assuming that's a typo before it gets sent to the Scottish Government. It's also interesting as well, I think, I'll come to a question in a minute, but I'm really pleased to see that we've reduced, it's at its lowest level since we've really started to look at this. And to be fair, this was brought in by the then Labour administration way back in the 2012, and you'll remember that, Chair, as do other members here. But it was based on quality academic research, the policy and the processes we took it forward. So I'm a bit worried about the key findings being drafted out from the End Child Poverty Coalition and the Centre for Research and Social Policy, Loughborough, because the public health messages there, please be noted that that has to be treated with some caution due to the small sample size. Now that academic, so if we go back to the academic research we did using the Crichton Trust and others many years ago now, it's about 10 years ago now, isn't it? CPAG came in and they did a massive piece of work in Dumfries and Galloway and actually drew members' attention to poverty wasn't just kept in the little bubbles that we'd traditionally thought, like in my ward and Paula's ward and Jim's ward and some of the Stranraer wards and some of the Annan areas. It was actually right across the region where there were pockets of deprivation amongst young children in particular. So I'm actually wondering there, it's too late to do it in this year, but I'm wondering if for next year we should actually get a better quality survey so that we actually get the real figures for Dumfries and Galloway, not just best estimates, is there. That was my first thing. But the other thing I was just looking at, again, if you go to progress and future direction, and the key box that's there, the one with all the priority groups and the increase. So the question really is, have we increased the resources into those areas, or have Scottish Government or the UK Government increased resources into those areas? And that is potentially one of the reasons why there's an improvement in the situation. And the last question regards, Jim actually touched on it here, another grant-giving organisation that I sat on, there were 4 community groups in Upper Nithsdale who all put a separate application in for £10,000 for a minibus, and the agreement was they were going to work together to provide transport in Mid and Upper Nithsdale where there was no public transport. And I'm just wondering if that has been taken into account, or if that's actually been done, because if it's not, we should actually be speaking to those organisations, and they should be coming forward, because that's what they were funded for. Okay, thank you.
Lynn?
Thank you. I'll try and pick up all those, but if I miss one, please come back to me. So the data, if I start with the data, it's a national issue. The data, it's not just a local issue. The survey information that we're basing it on is the household below average income, which is a national survey, and the data size dropped during COVID and it hasn't recovered. So it's a national issue that we don't have robust data.
Chair, do you mean a UK issue or a Scotland issue?
A UK, it's a UK issue.
Thank you.
So, go on, Lynn.
The second one was about the poverty across the region and where we're putting resources in, but there's like extra resource into that. There has been extra resource from Scottish Government through a number of different funding programmes that I'm aware of. There are specific funding for child poverty, employability through Best Start Bright Futures and No One Left Behind. There's Child Poverty Accelerator funding, and this report is not taking in the totality of child poverty resources. It's what is related to the Child Poverty Action Plan. So there's more going on than what is in this report, if that makes sense. The last question, I think, or the last point was about the community transport in Upper Nithsdale, and I've taken a note of that. I'll go away and find out about that, Councillor Ferguson, and come back to you.
Okay, Councillor Ferguson. Okay, thank you. We're on to Councillor Marshall now.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, and I think Councillor McFarlane, I think it was, that highlighted, within the executive summary that, we are seeing improvement, going from 8th highest to the 15th, but we're still in the bottom half and we still have 1 in 4 children in poverty. So there's a lot of work to be done, but commend the work that's been ongoing, and it's just in relation to the key successes in 32. I'm just going to ask: is there one main area that you could identify that has had the biggest impact on the improvement in the figures from a lot of the initiatives, and is there some areas as well that has a bigger impact, and maybe we should focus on those going forward within the this year's action plan? So really just interested if you could maybe just identify what that main area is, or if there's a couple of main areas that have seen us improve the stats.
Lynn?
I think it's quite hard to attribute the success to any one intervention. The Fraser Valander Institute report does suggest that the Scottish Child Payment is probably the deciding difference, and that is reflected right across Scotland, in that the child poverty rate is reducing in Scotland and it's not reducing in other parts of the UK. So that I would say the Scottish Child Payment is one. Fraser Valander have also done a number of modelling scenarios of what we might need to do to get to the child poverty target that the Scottish Government have set, because we are not currently on target to do that. And really, I think the levers that they're talking about are levers that don't sit with the local authority. The other significant difference, I think, has been made through the investment in employability. Obviously, work is one of the key drivers in terms of tackling poverty. Scottish Child Payment being another one, the kind of maximising income. So I think the key difference, I would have to say, would appear to be the Scottish Child Payment at the moment.
Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Marshall. Thanks, Lynn, for that. I don't have any more speakers. I've got Councillor Stevenson. Is it about the recommendations?
Yeah, sorry, Chair, if we could just come back in. Do you want me just to read it and then...
Do you want me to start the recommendations and then you can come in where you want to add?
Well, I've got a wee bit extra just to say, and then the recommendations, just to give them a bit of kind of context, if that's... Because we've not actually touched on that subject yet. Yeah. But, on page 22, 4.3, the government's Bright Starts, Bright Futures, we talk about income from employment. But then actually on page... And one of the biggest issues with families and lone parents, which I'm going to talk about, getting them into employment, is actually childcare. So when we get to page, let me just find it. It's here, it's definitely number 10 on the list. Page 38, 39, number 10, school-age childcare, it says that the Scottish Government plan to develop a more detailed delivery plan in 25-26, setting out what a targeted school-age childcare offer will look like for families within communities and providing a clear timescale. But no further information has actually been received from the Scottish Government. So if we're wanting to get people into employment, then childcare will be one of the biggest issues that they come to. Now I'm looking at it from a lone parent. I was a lone parent. I can't speak on behalf of the other priority groups because it wouldn't be fair, but it actually ties in with what my recommendations are. So we've obviously discussed childcare. It doesn't just affect lone parents, it affects families. Most childcare delivered these days is actually still working around a 9 to 5 office-based job, but in actual fact, how many of those actually exist these days? But it can be the difference between a family being in paid work and not being in paid work. But the impact it makes on a lone parent is much more significant. The lone parent charity, Gingerbread, has a list of issues it believes needs to be addressed. One is around reforming child maintenance service, and I completely agree with that. Secure and flexible working, making child care work, and then there's another list. So as part of the recommendations I would like to put in at 2.3, we agree that the Chair writes to the Scottish Government requesting information and timelines for targeted school-age childcare, because that's a big driver for getting people into work. And 2.4 agrees that this committee receives presentations from charities and organisations that represent each priority group to allow the committee to hear evidence of campaigns that this council can consider when developing policies regarding child poverty. Thank you.
Seconder for that.
I'm happy to second that, Chair.
Councillor Marshall, second that.
It's a point of order, Chair.
If you want to come in, Councillor Ferguson.
Yeah, this is a report, a historical report, and it's also a joint report. We are not in a position to ask the NHS to write to anybody, because they would have to write as well, because it's a joint report.
Take advice for
Yeah, well, clearly the action plan, yes, it is a joint action plan, but the requests that are being asked for are within the delegations of this subcommittee. It's for the Chair to determine. Thank you.
I think Councillor Ferguson will be prepared to write to the Scottish Government requesting information and timelines for targeted school-age childcare, because I think childcare is an important part of reducing poverty.
Chair, can I come back in?
Yeah, certainly.
We would have to ask the NHS to do it as well. So I've no problem with you writing outside, but not as part of this report, because this report is a historical. This is an annual return to go to Scottish Government, right, on behalf of the local authority and the NHS. So it's not in our gift at this moment in time to write about it, because this is history. Right? That's a separate issue for a separate day and another day, I would suggest. Very valid issue. I admit it's no something that we should be writing from this committee on a report, which is a historical report, reporting on what has actually happened in the past. So, but I take the point, because if you want to do that as well, I think, given that the Scottish Child Payment is actually one of the principal reasons that it's been coming down, appreciate that's a best estimate, is then we should also be writing to the UK Government about getting rid of the two-child cap. So I'll be putting, if you're going to take that, I'm going to move as well that we actually write to the UK Government to remove the two-child cap as a matter of urgency.
Yeah, just a point, we've actually written to the UK Government from this committee on a previous report. Thank you.
So we want to go tit for tat here, because we're a sort of non-political subcommittee and we're trying to work together. We did write to the Scottish Government to ask about various things. We did write to the UK Government about the two-child payment, and hopefully that is going to be resolved in the next few months by the government. I'm quite happy to write to write to the Scottish Government, whether on my own behalf or on behalf of the committee, and I'll do that. And 2.4 says, agrees that this committee receives presentations from charities and organisations that represent each priority group to allow the committee to hear evidence and campaigns that this council can consider when developing policies regarding child poverty. I think if we can take that offline, Paula, and make sure that in our business meetings that we take that into consideration. So if we could remove that as a recommendation, then I think we can take that offline and progress it. And
Can I suggest we take it as an action rather than remove it altogether? Because it's a fair assumption, it's a fair point, just the wrong place to raise it.
Take it as an action point. That's quite good. And I'd like Councillor Ferguson to allow me to write to that. And being a sort of intermediary, not being a sort of non-political person here, I think I want to see us working together as a group. Is that okay, Councillor Ferguson?
Absolutely.
Agreed to the first amendment or addition to the, and we've taken the other one as an action. So we'll go to the other recommendations. It's one, to note the background and requirements to the Child Poverty Action Report and agree the proposed earlier presentation with 25-26 activities set out of paragraphs 4.1 to 4.9, and to approve the annual report on the Fish and Galloway Local Child Poverty Action Plan 2024-26 as detailed in Appendix 1, noting the next steps out at paragraphs 4.12 and 4.14. And we've got the Councillor Stevenson's additional recommendation. So thank you very much for that. And then there was you, Room.
Sorry, Chair, just before, did you also take on board that we asked you to write to the UK government about the two-child captive to be removed immediately?
Yeah,
if we're doing one, we do the other, yeah.
Councillor Mark Malloy can maybe send you a copy of what we got back at the last, we did get a reply, I believe, so. It was
through your self-chair, the committee previously did ask us to write to the UK government regarding the cap, and we've done that, and we circulated the reply to members of the committee, so that was done a few months ago.
And still nothing's happened. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. 10-minute break. We return at 1:45. 11:45. Thank you. Welcome back, members. Just before we commence the agenda, I'd just like to say that my video launching Challenge Poverty Week is going viral. It's at 2.1k views. If you view it, which I highly not recommend, that'll be another few. Okay, item 6 is British Sign Language Plan 2025 to 2030, one-year progress report by Head of Thriving Communities. Mark Malloy is here to assist members if you have any questions. Before we begin, Mark, members received an email from Southwest Signers yesterday requesting a meeting to discuss some things with us. Would you like to respond to that first of all? Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. So we understand that the letter was sent to most members of this committee and some other members. Later today, I will respond to that on behalf of the Council and offering to meet with the organisation along with colleagues within school services to make sure that we can understand the position of that group and what it is that they're wanting to tell us, and then we'll ensure that that's incorporated into the ongoing work at the officers group who are taking forward the British Sign Language Plan when we take that into consideration over the next 12 months.
Thanks very much, Mark, for that. I think that's a good way forward. Have any members got any comments or questions on the British Sign Language Plan? Councillor Stevenson, then Councillor Ferguson.
Thanks, Chair. I've got a few, but I'm going to just focus on one. Thank you for this report. I know it's been asked for in a couple of committees. On page 56, it says, consider BSL users and how we communicate, use social media and translate documents. And it says ongoing, when we are launching any new information, consideration is given as to whether the information should be available in BSL. Surely all information should be available in BSL. Thank you.
Yep. Lindsay?
Thanks, Councillor. Yeah, so any information that we're putting out, the majority of it we're trying to get into signed videos now. There is a challenge in terms of just the timeline. If it's something that quickly needs to go out, it does take us a few days to get the videos prepared and ready because it's an external company that we use. So slowly as we're launching new material, we are working with services to try and encourage them to get those videos prepared. So the most recent one we've done is the bus timetables, so they've all obviously changed. So there's been a BSL video made in the last sort of week, and it's just been added onto the council website now, and we're just looking to get that circulated. So it's work in progress. Thank you.
Yeah, just to come back there, Chair, if we're using an outside company, surely on page 55, the Grow Our Own, we should have commenced that by now so that we can keep that in-house. Thank you.
Mark?
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Councillor Stevenson. In terms of Grow Your Own, I think we're needing to look at that as a long-term approach because of the detailed skills and knowledge that we require you know, the people to be able to do the sign language to the level that's acceptable for that community, where it's to high standard, that it will be something that we're looking at over the long term with the duration of this 5-year plan. Because I'd maybe just point out for all members that obviously this is a 1-year progress report, because we were very keen to provide members with the opportunity to scrutinise this, but it is 1 year of a 5-year plan that members have agreed.
Okay, Councillor Ferguson.
Thanks. Actually, it's pretty much in the same vein as Paula. I would have thought this was getting BSL'd this committee as it was taking place live. It's a bit. I appreciate there's always a cost involved in that, but at the same token, I mean, if we're here talking about the progress report and we're trying to embed this into the council, everything the council does, we do it for all the other committees. I would have thought we should have had a translator here, or at least online for it. And that's a comment. There's a couple of things in here, and I do appreciate this is purely about the British Sign Language, and it's about the reports, the requirement, or the BSL Scotland Act 2015. Yeah, so I appreciate that. But at every time we've discussed this, we've talked about hard of hearing. And every time we've been told something will happen. And I'm still waiting to see what's going to happen. Because on this committee alone, I think there's at least 3 or 4 councillors all got hearing aids. Okay? Never mind the vast number of people in the region who've got hearing aids. Now, I'm not asking you to put that into there, and I'm looking at an action point, Chair, rather than anything to do with this report, because I do appreciate this is a very, very specific report, a very niche area. But if we're going to be serious, we need to discuss, and also with the Education Service, how many teachers of the deaf they've actually got now, because I know they were recruiting and they were training some of their own. And what I'd like to find out again as part of the action would be rather than EMAS it, I think it's just asked through here, would be how many we've trained up of our own and who have stayed with us. Because my worry might be, because they're so specialist, they would be snapped up elsewhere for more money. So it's a kind of dual action I'm asking here, Chair, with your, if you'll bear with me on that one. But I'm happy to say well done and thank you for the report itself.
Have you got the 2 actions? I think we can all agree to them. Is that all right? Yeah. Mark, do you want to come in?
Yeah, thanks, Chair, and thanks, Councillor Ferguson. In terms of the hard of hearing, the responsibility for that within the council sits within social work, so we could take forward a conversation with colleagues within that team in social work and potentially look to get a briefing out to members on the work that we are doing across the organisation to support hard of hearing, because I think you were absolutely correct that this report is very specific around the requirements as an organisation in terms of the legislation. But I'll take that back and speak to colleagues within social work and bring it back, and also the specific question about the BSL in schools, I think relates as well directly to that email that members received yesterday. So again, if that's logged as an action, if members are content, we'll discuss that with colleagues within school services and ensure that members are cited in that information.
Yeah, Councillor Ferguson.
Just very quickly, that's exactly why we set up this committee. It's so that things didn't slip through the cracks, you know, because it would be a danger if we didn't have that. It would get done in a little silo in one department, another little silo in another department, and never the two shall meet. So I said that, so thank you for that and agreeing to do that, because that's exactly why we put forward the motion in the first place to set up this subcommittee.
Thanks for your point, Councillor Ferguson. I don't have anybody else want to speak apart from Councillor Stevenson.
Always, Chair. Thank you. I know when we were talking about the visitor levy, that they were able to share resources across councils. See if we had to invest in growing our own, and I know it's difficult, and I know that the deaf community mainly prefer a deaf person to sign for them. But would there not be a way where we could actually capitalise on that. And then just on the Highland 1+2 is the third language option. I've pushed that on education for a long, long time. We talk about later on in this report that if there's a child in a school, you know, we help support that child within that school, but if that child goes to extracurricular activities with kids that are not part of their school, that child can't communicate with them, and you know, it leaves them set aside from everybody else, which isn't fair. So, you know, I've supported the Highland 1+2 for a long, long time now, rolled out throughout all schools. Thank you.
Anyone to come in? Lindsay?
Thank you. So we'll follow up with education just about the Highland one again, because that does sit with education. In terms of the interpreters and the sort of grow your own scheme, the NHS Dumfries and Galloway have got a similar action to us. We did work jointly in the plans, although the plans do sit separately in each organisation, but some actions are quite similar. So we would be looking to work alongside them to see how we could develop interpreters. As Mark said, it is quite challenging. We've tried to recruit interpreters for the council a couple of years ago as well, but we struggle to get interpreters in this area qualified to the level that we would need them to be at. We do have a really good programme launched through lifelong learning. So we do staff training, it's a half day, just sort of BSL awareness, deaf awareness, but they also do community-based courses where it's a 10-week and you can learn different signs, and also I think it's a level 1 they kind of progress to. So we are doing work behind the scenes to work with lifelong learning to see how do we offer that out and then develop people that then might want to come and work for us and help us, because we do recognise, as I'm sure committee are aware, it is expensive to get these videos prepared and to get interpreters to come here. None of them really live locally, so we're paying travel as well. So it is something we're working on, but as Mark said, it is a 6-year plan and that is quite a significant piece of work, but we're certainly working with NHS to try and do something between us that we can both kind of share the resources. Thank you.
Okay, so no more speakers, so we'll go to the recommendations. And the recommendation, members asked to note and scrutinise the progress of actions for the 2024 to 2030 British Sign Language Plan as detailed in Appendix 1. Happy to note and scrutinise? Yeah. Okay. And item 7 is options for future arrangements of funding for projects that tackle poverty and inequalities. From April to 2026 onwards, report by Head of Thriving Communities. You remember at previous meetings we've scrutinised the programme of work that we do across the council as development funding. Now we're looking at to make it mainstream core funding. Mark Malloy is here to assist members if you have any questions. So I'll open it up to member debate. Vice Chair, Councillor Lowe.
Thank you. This is just, I think, for clarity for everyone. So on page 76 at the top, there's a carry forward of £211,000. And I think one of the things that we need to be working towards, definitely via this subcommittee, is that we maximise our expenditure so people are not in poverty and that we're lifting people out of poverty. Can I just have a brief explanation of where that's come from and how that's accrued for from the end of March 2025, or how it's come across, basically?
Mark?
Yeah, thanks, Chair, and thanks, Councillor Lowe. The 211k is various small pots of funding from different projects over a number of years. So it's not from one project that's had any underspend or carry forward. It's accumulation of various small amounts which have been reported to the relevant committee at that time. So what was provided to members as part of budget setting for the current financial year was the option for members to fully utilise all those small amounts of underspend to allow them to allocate the 1.1 million towards projects for the current financial year. I just point out that is non-recurring, so we have now used it and are using it within the current financial year, so that underspend would not be there for members to utilise as part of budget setting for 2026-2027.
Councillor Lowe.
So thank you for that answer. So I'm just wondering, if we have underspends in the future, but money is, say, particularly allocated to a project, does that kind of stay forever as being allocated? Or if it's absolutely evident that that particular need has passed and it's needed elsewhere, does the money have to go back to where it came from? Or do we have any say in what we can do with it?
Yeah, I think in terms of the funding, any underspends that are allocated in that financial year for policy investment allocated to tackling poverty and inequalities, but it would be there for members to consider within future budget settings. In terms of the current financial year that we're in, we're not anticipating at this point in time, now it could change because we've still got half the financial year to go, but as it stands at the moment, we're not anticipating any underspends within the in-year projects that members have agreed to fund for 25-26.
Happy we're going to get rid of this underspend and make sure it's used on good projects. Okay, thank you. We've got a number of people online. Councillor Marshall and then Councillor Wilson.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, it's just at 4.7. It's the second paragraph. Some of the projects are now being funded by the Scottish Government, but it says, I'd like to know what these are, but it says they're detailed at 4.24, but there doesn't seem to be a 4.24.
Mark?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Marshall, pointing out. I must apologise and take ownership over that. It was within 4.24 of an earlier draft of the report, and I've obviously mistaken that out, so apologies that that's been included within that. In terms of the projects that have been funded by the Scottish Government now, it's predominantly in relation to the Period Dignity project that is now fully funded by the Government, and this committee had previously allocated funding for it, and also in terms of the discretionary grant payments that are available for individuals in terms of crisis grants, which has been fully funded by Scottish Government as well. So it's those two allegations, and apologies again that that's been missed by myself when that report's been finalised.
No, that's fine. You've explained what those are. That's what I was wanting. Thanks.
Well spotted, Councillor Marshall. Councillor Wilson?
Thanks, Chair. I was kind of going to ask the same question, but obviously Councillor Marshall's bit me to it. But I absolutely think we should be agreeing the recommendations to establish a core revenue budget, and it always disappoints me that it comes forward as a budget saving template every year. So I'm happy to agree the recommendations. Thank you.
For that, anybody else wanting to come in? We've got Councillor Dempster.
Just a daft question, Chairman. On some of the allocations, for example, taxi card scheme and community transport, are these spread right across the region? Because whilst the opportunity is there to uptake that provision, sometimes the provision itself is no. So can we have maybe some indication of where the vacancies or voids or no service in relation to some of these schemes are? Or can we just have a general report saying whether or no they're all absolutely being taken up region-wide and what the population or the percentage of usage is per location? Might be complicated, but just to ensure we've got a picture of what's actually happening right across the region in each and every one of the initiatives. Thanks, Chair.
Yeah, it's a question about across region provision.
Yeah, thanks, Chair, and thanks, Councillor Dempster. I just bring to attention that the report that we brought to the committee in May had the detailed evaluation and information for each of these projects. So this report doesn't have the same information because it would have been duplicating what we had presented to members earlier in the year. But the link is within the background papers that and if members were to go to that, it would provide the appendice with the really good work that Wendy had done, and from recollection, I think it was nearly 100 pages worth of detail across all the projects. All that information was previously presented to the committee, including giving an indication of which communities each of these projects were working in, if it was projects that were happening within communities as opposed to region-wide.
Councillor Dempster.
Chairman, thanks for that. I wasn't a member of the committee until a few weeks ago, so I wouldn't have access to that information. But if Wendy could maybe ping it to me to save me searching, or Mark, I'd be very grateful for that. And thanks for that information. I'll study that at my leisure. Thank you.
I've got Councillor Lowe, then Councillor Ferguson.
Thank you. Yeah, so this is by way of wanting to log an action. So when we had the members' seminar to look at some of this in a lot more detail, a request was made that a paper is brought together, a briefing of all the funds are paid for tackling poverty, whether it's for the council, from the council, whether it's Scottish Government or from elsewhere, what it's for and how much we're getting. And we would just, as a group, we would like to ask if we could make that a bit more of a comprehensive report to help us feed better into our budget discussions. So, for example, what the current budget is, how many people benefit, is it a recurring or non-recurring sum that we're able to receive externally, how it's managed within the council, and exactly what it's for. So if it's possible, that can get included. So when we get that briefing, over the next couple of years as we tackle a budget, we know that we're hitting the spot for where it needs to go.
Mark?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. We're just in the process over the next few weeks of finalising the output pack from the members' seminar, and that will be provided to members, which track all the discussion points that's there. So we'll finalising that with the Director for Social Work next week at some point. I would anticipate that then coming out to members. And then in terms of that comprehensive report, we can look at that in terms of pulling that information together and providing it to members. And I would discuss that with the Director, but I would think that most of that work has already been done, so it's maybe just pulling it together into the one place, and then we could look to bring it back to this committee at its December or its January meeting for members' consideration.
With that, Vice Chair.
I was just about to follow up and say what is the timeline for that, but if we have a date to bring it back to a committee, that's great.
Councillor Ferguson.
Thanks very much. Good morning, Mark and Wendy. I'm looking at the 4.2, and it's the support for tackling poverty reference group 10,000. Now, there's two groups, isn't there? There's one group made up totally of, or almost totally made up of people who've lived experience of poverty, and then there's another with officers. So just remind me, is that the one with the lived in poverty experience? Yeah. Okay, so thanks very much for clarifying that. So the question really is, that's been 10,000 10 years ago, and it's still 10,000. So the question really is, we need to, so say at the budget panel, I would suggest, Chair, that we need, if we're serious about supporting volunteers and we're serious about supporting organisations like came in here earlier today, then we need to review that amount, because Wendy, I think you've been there for the start, haven't you? Right, class, yeah. And it's been getting tighter and tighter and tighter, because the 10,000 is able to buy less and less and less over the years. So I actually think we need to recommend to the budget panel to actually review that. Now, is that part of the core budget, that 10,000, or is it part of the policy development? That's one of the reasons of Councillor Lowe's question. Because if it's part of the core budget, then we need to review it, and that's the way to do it. If it's part of the policy development funding, I would suggest we need to move that 10k plus some addition across to the core budget on a recurring basis, because that reference group is what gives us the credibility. Right? It tells us firsthand from people who know what it's like, how things go on, how difficult it is and everything else. And with the best will in the world, I would struggle to tell somebody now what we're like living from hand to mouth. I really would. So I'm not that sure how we take that forward, Chair, from here, but I think probably we could recommend to the budget panel to consider moving that 10k, if it's not in core funding already, to move it into core funding as part of the recommendations here, to include that in the recommendations, and also to review the amount to make sure that it's actually sufficient to carry out the functions that that group is set up to carry out. Does that seem fair?
Get view on, is it part of the core proposals to be core funding?
Thanks, Chair, and thanks, Councillor Ferguson. All the projects detailed in 4.2, including the Tackling Poverty Reference Group, are funded through policy investment funding. As it stands, none of those projects are core funded. This report is asking members to recommend to full council to establish a core budget for tackling poverty of 630k, because at the moment what we've got is a core budget of 630k within policy investment, and it's currently allocated to poverty projects by members. So what we are recommending, based on the decisions of this committee, its last meeting, is for members to establish, to recommend to full council to establish a core budget, and then we would then look to bring back to this committee for members to decide where you would want to allocate that 630k to those projects. So if you've got that list of projects, with the Tackling Poverty Reference Group being one of those, that a paper will come back for members to make a decision to how you wish to allocate that 630k going ahead, should full council support the creation of a permanent budget.
I suppose the question, Councillor Ferguson, is should we be index linking the whole thing? Because obviously we've not taken into account inflation for the last couple of years, but maybe you can come.
Yes, but there are two things in that. I think Mark said to come back here, but I didn't think this was a budget holding committee. We could recommend. We would have to recommend to somebody. Yeah, I think I'm right in that. No doubt governance will keep me right if I'm wrong, but I think I'm right. So there is no budget attached to this committee, but we can advise other budget holders how we think they should use it, and it's still up to them. So, I mean, personally, I would like to see us be the budget holding committee, but that's not the present case, because then at least we would know the money could go.
Get government's advice on that one.
Sorry, do you want to come in? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm clearly looking at the recommendations. Yes, you're correct. This committee is largely scrutiny, and we're making recommendations to other places for decision making. Thank you.
Yeah, that was my understanding, Chair, and I'd be quite happy doing that. And I thought that, as I say, this was like an extra scrutiny, a coordinating committee, whatever you want to call it. But it's no per se a decision-making committee. It's only a recommending committee. That was it. As I said, I would be quite happy if we were, but I mean, we'd have to change the standing orders. That would have to go through full council, because that way at least we know the money we're going to feed kids who are needing fed, rather than to fix, like some areas in Scotland who've got roads like billiard tables, but the kids are starving.
Yeah, I think it's something that we can suggest to Standing Order Subcommittee when it reviews the operation of the committee. Mark wants to come in again.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks, Councillor Ferguson. So within the report, we're recommended to full council to establish the 630k budget, so that you're correct that would be up to full council to decide. But previously, what this committee had said they wanted to do was to recommend then how that 630k would be allocated. So the report that will come back to this committee will be asking members to make a decision on the recommendation to full council. So I know it's not a final decision, but this committee was very clear previously that you wanted to help guide those decisions by the wider members. So if full council agree to allocate the 630, we would then look for this committee to provide recommendations on how to allocate that. And I appreciate it's gone back and forward, but otherwise it doesn't give this committee the ability to shape where that money is allocated.
Can I come back in, Chair? I understand that, and that's part of the problem, isn't it? You know, because if we're recommending, we would have to recommend to full council, or we could actually bring back the next paper to hear when's that in 2 months' time, right? So that would be December, right? So then we could recommend to full council at the budget setting that they set aside that, because I don't think it would have to, because if it had to go to full council and then back to this, it would be past the deadline for actually changing next year's budget. Okay, so in expediency, I'm saying, for expediency, is if that paper was to come to the December committee here, we can recommend to full council so that in the budget setting, because that's the only decision that needs to be taken, and that's where that decision would be taken in all probability, yes. That would allow us to do it in the timescale, or else we'd be at the next financial year, if you get my drift.
I think today we're recommending to the full council that we have this money put into the core budget, which makes it more certain that it will continue. Obviously, there's no certainties in life, but hopefully, by doing what we're doing today, we're protecting the budget that's going to be handed down to us. I've got two more speakers. I've got Councillor Marshall and Councillor Jimison.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I'm just a little bit confused about what Andy's saying, because Mark has actually done what we asked him to do based on discussions, not only at the last meeting, but 2 or 3 meetings, where one of the main wishes of this committee was to actually get some of this funding core funded. And, you know, Labour were very adamant, you know, that we wanted to do that, but we have to do it through the process. So this is the process happening. You know, I totally understand. We can't make that decision, but we asked Mark. We says this committee expressed a desire to have part of funding embedded in core funding. So this is a report that will set that in motion. The decision will have to be taken by full council, and that should be taken in plenty of time for the budget for the next financial year. So what we're doing now, that's why I welcome this report. This report is a major kind of change, because we will have 630,000 that is embedded within budgets going forward, and we're going through the process now. So we have to go through this process because we don't have the remit to actually ask for that. So it's exactly the report that Mark's brought forward that we've been asking for the last 9 months.
Thanks, Councillor Marshall. Councillor Jimison.
Yes, thanks very much, Chair. I'm speaking in support of Andrew Ferguson's comments and recommendation proposals. I don't disagree with what Sean has said just now. It's important. The whole idea of this committee was to get more specialised and closer scrutiny and bring together the various service groups. And it's very important that when we're looking at these very, very important issues, that's an element of expertise there. And what this committee has done in the process of several months has highlighted a lot of issues that certainly I wasn't aware of, and the detail of the work that goes on that most of us probably won't be as aware that we should. So I would say that the decision-making process of this subcommittee becomes highly relevant, and I'm not sure that it's taken through to make a difference in such as budget policies, etc. So I'm in principle in favour of Andrew Ferguson's comments, but I agree there is complications with the delegations of the committee, etc., etc. But it's worth considering how much weight the recommendations from this committee, this subcommittee, actually is taken. We've made great strides, but as yet we really need to have a wee bit more influence, tangible influence, to actually make a difference. And some of the things that Andy mentioned are quite crucial. That we have the level of knowledge that can make the recommendations based on the knowledge that we've gained in this subcommittee.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Jimison. Okay, Yeah, we've got the recommendations, and if you want to add in, then fair enough. The recommendations are, members are asked to note the information provided as requested to allow members to review the current cost of living support. I think we can note that. And 2, agree to recommend to full council to establish a core revenue budget on a recurring basis for tackling poverty and inequalities projects as part of the 26-27 budget setting process, utilising the 630,000 recurring policy investment funding as detailed in 4.515.4.18. We're happy to agree that one.
Can I come in, Chair? Yeah, yes, I do. Can we just get clarity? If that's coming, is that going to the December full council? That paper? This recommendation?
Well,
because if it isn't, it's too late. That's my whole point. Yeah, I'm totally with. I think Sean's picked me up wrong. I'm totally with the suggestions of what's happening here. It's the timing I'm worried about. Because if it doesn't go to December's full council, the next full council is in February. It's too late.
Harry?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, in an effort just to really build on, I mean, I think Mark has given a very comprehensive background to date. So I guess the first issue, which I'm hearing from members that they're happy to take forward, is at the moment there's a recurring policy budget, which is the 630, but as things stand, it wasn't allocated on a core basis to this particular subject matter. So if members agree with the allocation, the recommendation today, that then not only is it recurring, but it's recurring and allocated to tackling poverty and inequalities. And I think, as members will be well aware, there are a number of, for want of a better term, parallel work streams happening here, linked to the budget development process, etc. And what we will make sure, working with colleagues in finance, is that they'll be taken forward in a timescale that is compatible with ensuring that members are able to make decisions, including this committee, that as of the 1st of April 2026, the allocation that members so wish to the particular initiatives and projects are all in place and all good to go. But clearly, depending on the budget development process, there may be subsequent decisions after the subcommittee that would impact that to a greater or lesser degree. So that's what we need to navigate through. But I think the first step is to get recommendations agreed today that would put forward the fact that the 630 members would like to have that as a core budget, but also allocated on a core basis to poverty and inequalities.
I suppose the question is it going to be reported to the next meeting of the council? Is that, will it be?
Sorry, my thing I was trying to get in there. That was exactly my point. If it doesn't go to December's full council, we can't agree it before the budget gets set. Therefore, it defeats the purpose of this. That's my whole point.
I'll bring in Claire.
Right. Okay. I've just had a quick look at the published forward plan there for the December full council. I can't see any direct reference to it currently, but clearly the recommendation is to take this forward as a part of the budget setting process, and we're working ultimately towards that full council in February where the budget gets agreed. I don't really have any involvement personally in the budget setting process, so I'm unable to give you some professional advice on that, but this decision would get captured and get taken forward through that process.
Can I come back in, Chair?
I'll let Mark come in first.
Sorry.
Mr. Ferguson, thank you.
Thanks, Chair. Just for clarity, and I appreciate we're getting into granular detail here, but it's not in the forward plan because at this point the decision had not been made by this subcommittee to make the recommendation. So if this subcommittee makes this recommendation today, this report's been developed with significant engagement for the Chief Financial Officer, and we would make sure that through his guidance that it's done in a timely fashion that would allow members to consider this recommendation in time for budget setting. And if that means taking it to December's committee, we'll ensure that's done, but we'll do that in full consultation with the Chief Financial Officer.
Councillor Ferguson.
Yeah, if I could, I was actually going to suggest is we actually just insert into 2.2 that recommend full council on the date in December. Okay, actually name the date, so that's when it's going, and there's no dubiety. Okay.
I've already got that written in the recommendations now.
Thank you very much, Chair. That's exactly.
So agreed to recommend to full council on the date in December. Yes, that to establish it. Okay, can you add that in?
Yeah, full council's 11th of December.
Okay, so that's that approved. Thank you, Councillor Ferguson, for your input there. Next item is 8, House and Emergency Action Plan, report by Interim Head of Economy and Environment. Jamie Little is here to assist members to have any questions. Anything to add, Jamie, to the report when you get sat down?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just one error in the report to flag up at 4.3.9 on page 89. It relates to the number of groups within the council at this time. The report should refer to 7 groups, being that Councillor Brodie is aligned to the independent group, which means that instead of 8 groups, the report should refer to 7, and also later on in the report of 4.3.11, this should now refer to a total of 8 members rather than 9. The report is also suggesting that members look to nominate a substitute if required. This will not impact on the governance process today, though, because this is about making a recommendation on to the Economy and Infrastructure Committee.
As you mentioned, it will be up to the Economy etc. Committee to finalise their arrangements. I'll open up the report to debate. Councillor Stevenson.
Thank you, Chair. Just for the point, housekeeping, it actually mentions, where are we? 4.2.2 Appendix 3, but there's not actually an Appendix 3. So I had to go online and look for it, which is fine, but I prefer things in paper. I'm still old school. The other thing as well, and I'll hope you'll let me go on about it, we've got the Emergency Housing Action Plan, and within that is a substantial amount of homelessness. Now we know Councillor Ferguson touched earlier on about the hard of hearing along with the BSL and how things are slightly slipping through the cracks in this committee. It's actually within this delegation of this committee to hear about the homelessness, but it's not actually here, so it's hard to look at the housing and the Emergency Action Plan and not actually look at homeless. So I was just wondering if we would see that report or something similar come back here, because in actual fact some of the things we should be looking at today is to do with homelessness. So I was just wondering if we could have some clarity on whether that will be coming back here, because I would rather duplicate something than allow something to fall through the cracks. Thank you.
Is that possible, Jamie?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Thanks, Councillor Stevenson. So in terms of homelessness, it doesn't sit within my remit, but I'll certainly take that up for discussion with relevant officers. I know a report is coming to the Social Work Committee on Thursday, just in terms of engagement with the Scottish Housing Regulator. As members are aware, one of the reasons for declaring the emergency in this area has been the systemic risk of failure of the homelessness services. So I'll certainly pick that up with officers and request that a report or an update is brought back to this particular committee.
Councillor Stevenson. Okay. I've got Councillor Dempster online.
Thanks, Chair. Just a couple of questions on page 90, the theme delivery of more homes. The fourth section down, it makes reference to engage with RSLs not currently developing new homes in the Frees Galloway to gauge interest, providing greater viability to deliver on the SHIP, the Strategic Housing Investment Plan. That's great, and I absolutely encourage that. And it might not be for this committee, it might be for E&I committee, but I would want us to investigate why RSLs that are in the SHIP, that have projects in the SHIP, are not progressing them. And I know Councillor Marshall raised a point about a project Annan, and I've certainly raised a question about one of the projects in my ward. And I'm sure some members will know that the Cabinet Secretary for Housing, Mary McCallan, lives in my ward. And I'm sure she'll be interested in why new homes aren't developed in the SHIP when there's funding available and projects are in the SHIP right across the region. So I would want some exploration in that. And if no here, can we somehow, Chairman, refer my inquiry to the E&I committee as European committee? Because I do think it's something we should explore, which is why social landlords have projects in the SHIP that are lying dormant for years and years, and we at the same stage have declared the housing emergency. And the only other observation I'd want to make or suggestion, and it's on page 100 of the housing emergency plan, where in the last block on page 100, it talks about review housing allocation policies on strategies tackling housing crisis to maximise the availability of housing across the region. I recently made application for a social house in East Lothian, not for myself, I might add, and I read their application form with interest. And they do a 1-for-2 application where if two people, presumably partnering, would move in together, they would get a priority because it would free up 2 houses for the provision of 1. And that currently, as far as I understand it, is not something that's included in the local housing register or homes for D&G. And whilst it might be more appropriate in the larger settlement, it's still something worth consideration if, in embracing that concept or that proposal, would free up additional homes. Thanks, Chairman.
2 points there. Can you enlighten Councillor Dempster on the SHIP and the matter we raised?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Thanks, Councillor Dempster, for the queries. In terms of any projects that aren't progressing in the Strategic Housing Investment Plan, we do sense a frustration from members, particularly when that happens in their wards, and we also are engaging on a regular basis with registered social landlords who hold land but aren't progressing that site. We will continue to progress that as Councillor Dempster has requested, and we have got a specific action to engage with one of the particular RSLs that's operating in your areas through Nestell Area Committee, Councillor Dempster, so hope to be able to provide an update on that as soon as possible. We are currently going through a round of our quarterly meetings with the registered social landlords, and we do also ask for monthly returns from them on all of their projects. Members will be aware that there are a number of financial challenges in terms of construction that are obviously causing some issues and some concerns, but we are doing everything we as a council can do to actively progress these sites. I will take an action away to review the East Lothian policy there that you've highlighted, Councillor Dempster. It's not something I'm aware of. East Lothian are a stock holding council, so they are able to have a little bit more flexibility in terms of allocations policies. But if there's an opportunity there to highlight something to our local registered social landlords, I can certainly take that away and see if that's something that we could look to put in place in Dumfries and Galloway.
Councillor Dempster.
Thanks, Chair. I was always grateful to Jamie for his support and guidance, and Jamie's been very, very good in supporting me along in many inquiries and projects that I'm trying to get on with, and I'm grateful to him for that. I just wonder if there's any mileage in saying to social landlords, whether it's in a formal notice or no, that whilst we would definitely encourage specific developments, especially for some of our more challenging members of the community that are looking for housing, that we would encourage new additions to the SHIP where social landlords are not developing the projects they already have in the SHIP, and that's for general housing, I would suggest, and no specific or detailed housing. But for general housing, they should be told in no uncertain terms they're not developing anymore until, in our reason, until they develop the ones that they've currently got in the plan. I don't know if that's something we can do or ask E&I to look at, or something Jamie could maybe report back in his wider discussions with RSLs in the near future. Thanks, Chairman.
I'll take that as a comment. Thank you very much. And, we've got Councillor Lowe, Vice Chair, and then Councillor
Chairman,
Ferguson.
no, I didn't want it as Chairman, I didn't want it as a comment. I want it as an action. We should be saying, we can't just comment. What I'm asking you to do, Chairman, is to either raise an action or refer to E&I, or I'll raise it E&I, that we should be asking Jamie to engage with him so he'll report back. And we should be taking a position of strength saying, you have already secured development sites and funding for the ship project. You shouldn't get any more until such times as the ones you have in your portfolio are completed. How that's worded in a motion and action, I will leave clear to guide, but I didn't want it as an observation. It's something we should be doing because Councillor Marshall raised an issue about no being developed in Annan, and I've raised an issue in my ward. There may be others. So we need to somehow bring social landlords to account. Thanks, Chairman.
It's just as well that the chairman of the E&I committee is here, so maybe he'll give an undertaking to make sure that that comes forward.
Thanks, if I can come in. Kim, can I just go in front of you? Okay, thanks. Yeah, Jim, I agree with you. And it would have to be in private business, though, at E&I committee, I would suggest, because there may be factors that we should hear that are not for public consumption at this moment. It's under the different legislation that goes into all that kind of stuff. So, yes, I'll speak with Jamie and I'll speak with the director offline to make sure that there's a report comes to E&I committee about those projects that are delayed for any reason, and we can get the different reasons and having it all set out in the report. And I see Jamie's nodding, so does that help, Jim?
Is that okay?
Councillor Ferguson, Chairman, I'm absolutely delighted with that. Thank you for your undertaking. I look forward to hearing from you in due course. Thanks, Chairman.
Okay.
Chair, on the same point.
Yes, quickly, Mr. Councillor Marshall, yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Lowe, for allowing me in on this. It's really just, yeah, I prefer that way of actually getting a report and getting a progress report on all the projects that are in the ship. I'm a little bit worried about what Jimmy, Councillor Dempster says with regards to stopping, because some projects that maybe are coming into the ship can be delivered a lot quicker. There is issues with some of the ones before, so I wouldn't want to kind of stop any new ones coming in because they might be done quicker. It's just that there is some problems with some of the sites. So we need to kind of have a review and not just to kind of bar social landlords or groups that are, you know, submitting more projects until the ones are finished. Just want to make that comment.
Thanks. Sorry, Councillor Lowe, we held you back, and now's your opportunity.
Thank you. Something completely different. I think it was Councillor Dempster who mentioned about where two households were willing to move into one. And that, I'm sure that works really well if it's if it's in a stock authority. But we have different RSLs and we have two routes by which people apply for homes. So they have to do two applications and monitor two lists. Do we have any influence on how they can work together? Because I've got a case where somebody who would actually free up a house that is really desperately needed, but it's two different housing associations and two different lists. So trying to get them to work together on our behalf for our residents.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Lowe, for the query. In terms of the working relationships we have with the rights of social landlords, we do engage with them on a regular basis, and if there is a particular case that needs to be flagged up, then I'm more than happy to do that. We do work very closely with them both in reviewing and considering their allocations policies. So this is Lawburn Lettings and the Common Housing Register. So we do have influence. And the two organisations, Lawburn and Homes for D&G, do work very closely together. Often in the meetings held by Homes for D&G, they will bring Lawburn in where there's a specific discussion that would benefit from a partnership approach right across all the registered social landlords. So operationally, that is something that is in play. But if there's a specific action or a specific case you'd like to raise with me, I'm more than happy to engage with both of the chief executives at the organisations.
Councillor Lowe?
No, that's fine, thank you. I'll give you details offline.
Councillor Ferguson.
Yeah, there was something mentioned earlier. Jamie mentioned something, and it's one of the recommendations here. Now, I'm assuming, well, I know this now goes to E&I because the Strategic Housing Forum operated under Economy and Resources, which is no longer. That's been transferred to E&I. So, on the recommendations at 4.3.9 and 4.3.11, I'm happy to take forward, that we take forward actually to E&I committee the recommendation that we invite the makeup of that committee is one from each group. But I would add to that the chair of this subcommittee, purely and simply to recognise the importance of this subcommittee in the whole housing matter, and how we should be working together with the forum to make sure that we get a decent outcome. And I would go as far as to say, yeah, and actually allow the chair, if he's unavailable, to let the vice chair go in his stead. I think that makes sense to me. And yet it brings it back up, I'm afraid, and it makes it a wee bit unwieldy. But, I mean, do we all need to go every day? I would suggest probably the common sense bit here is we won't all be there every day. So that recommendation will go to the E&I committee because the 5 who are currently there. So, actual fact, it's only, they will no longer be the case because there will be a new recommendation going to E&I for the make-up of that subcommittee. And I'm happy and hope that members here will agree with me that the political groupings, the 7 political groupings are allowed a seat on that with the addition of the Councillor Brodie, actually I'll no name you, Dick, the chair of the subcommittee is also invited onto that forum. Now the only thing I would suggest here is that, and we'll need to check with governance, do you have to be a member of E&I to sit in that forum?
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Ferguson. Just for the query, I'll come in just on the question there in terms of membership of the committee, of the forum. Sorry, I should clarify, it is just a forum, not a committee. There's no decision-making process within the forum. It's entirely around engagement on the local housing strategy. The makeup has been something that effectively we have created as a council. We have designed the Strategic Housing Forum to suit our own purposes. There isn't anything in terms of governance that's an absolute requirement apart from committee decisions that have been made by members in the past. So we don't have a specific template. At the moment, there is nothing to say that you have to be a member of Economy and Infrastructure Committee to sit on the Strategic Housing Forum. So it may well be that the Economy and Infrastructure Committee decide on members who aren't part of that particular committee. It is entirely at members' own discretion how we actually take forward the membership. In terms of time commitment, the forum tends to meet on a quarterly basis. There has been some time, given that the focus has been very much on developing the latest local housing strategy. But in terms of time commitment, we would hope that if the political groups, 7 political groups, and the chair are invited, that the input from them is obviously going to be critical. So we'll try and work very close to them to ensure that they can participate in the best way possible.
Okay, so we can go to the recommendations and we'll take that. So one is to note the update on the Scottish Government National Housing Emergency Election Plan as set out in section 4.2. Consider the elected member representation on the Strategic Housing Forum as considered in section 4.3, and that will be as Jamie Little and Councillor Ferguson suggested. And 3, agree the Housing Emergency Action Plan update is set out in section 4.4 of the report and detailed in Appendix 2. Happy to agree that one. And there's another one that Claire wants to read out.
Okay, well, you're suggesting an action, but I just wondered if it was clearer as a recommendation to recommend that E&I committee consider a report on delayed SHIP projects with the reasons for that delay clearly, or those delays clearly set out for review.
I'm comfortable with that, Chair. I think it's better a recommendation, yeah.
Happy with all those recommendations? Happy? Yeah, everybody happy with what we decided, considered and agreed. And action. Item 9, is any other business deemed urgent by the Chair due to need for decision? I haven't been notified of any urgent business, so can I thank you for your full and frank discussions today. I think we've had a good meeting, and thank for officers for their attendance today, and now bringing the meeting to a close. Thank you very much. Thank you.